Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Phil's Recap and Review, The Sopranos, Season 1, Episode 2, 46 long. And with you are two guys that really wish there was a telethon for fuckface-itis, but there isn't. Phil and with me again is Big Daddy Matt. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, it's good. It's good. I'm trying to figure this out. Go ahead. I'm good. I'm going to turn this off right now.
Yeah, Matt is navigating the streams of Google Hangouts and trying to make sure he can view the chat as well as everybody else and can tune into what you guys are saying as well. So, guys, I also have this thing right here because I tend to talk too much and we're on a time thing a little bit. I'm going to make sure that when we get into our recap, we do this no more than an hour. So it's going to be a little bit tighter of an episode recap than we're usually used to. And we're going to get into it. And with these Soprano episodes, certain watershed episodes, maybe around the season finales, will have longer explanations and talk about the seasons as a whole. But we really want to get right into these episodes because there's a lot to them and a lot of interesting stuff to talk about throughout the entire Sopranos. And we don't want to put Matt to sleep. Really. He doesn't want to go to sleep. Yes, Tim, we started a bit early. These things, we haven't quite organized the time exactly, so I'm just sort of scheduling them for fuckface o'clock. So this episode called 46 long, it's really like the whole episode has a theme to me. It has a theme of the old rules and another thing of people in power losing power. And it seems like those are the two big themes throughout the episode. And even with the 46 long, if we think about that one scene where Tony's yelling at Christopher and Brendan for what they did, he still takes a suit. He still breaks the rules. He still allows everybody in his group to partake in benefiting from what Christopher did. And I think that's a big theme of the entire episode. Everything that we start off in our opening segment before our theme, which is also something important to talk about this episode. But guys, before we get too into it, if you want to reach us, you can jump in the chat room live and say hi to us that way. You can also email me at igotissuesman@gmail.com. You can call in and talk to us if you want to do that at 781-990-8509. Tweet me at igotissuesman. Throw shit at me on the streets if you see me walking past. Lola, welcome, Lola. We got Lola and Tim in the chat. It's going to get nutty in here in a second. We got two of the best people in the world in the chat right now. Love you guys. And we also have our friends in the chat. And guys, just to get a scheduling thing, we're going to try to do these every single Wednesday until we get through The Sopranos. We will miss a week occasionally here and there because of busy things happen, but I will try to let you know. And we're going to try to do it between the hours of 4 and 5 o'clock, probably around 4, unless Matt or I have another responsibility that we have to preempt it for some reason. But this will generally be where the Sopranos casts live. And if you're listening to the audio cast of this somewhere, please come to YouTube and check us out live. You can also check out issuesprogram.com for all this fun information. Oh, welcome, Worldwide Horror. Master Chef. Yes. Oh, someone's playing Halo right now. We're having some Halo fun going on. Okay, Matt. So what did you think of this episode? What are your kind of overall thoughts about this episode so far?
It's amazing because we talked last time about how different the first episode was, and this suddenly feels exactly like The Sopranos are supposed to feel from the very first second that you turn it on. It opens up, they're in the back of the Bing, and they're all watching that interview on TV with, I forget what the guy's name is, but he's the one that's like turning against, he wrote a book, like a tell-all book, and it's Puss, Chris, Sil, Paulie, and Tony just sitting around counting money. It's like perfect. It's the most Sopranos thing you could possibly have.
And it's also interesting to note that in the first episode, we did a lot with, I mean, we still had this in this episode as well, but we did a lot with Tony and the women in his life, a lot of Carmela, a lot of Meadow and Livia and all of that. But we didn't get a lot of Tony hanging out with his buddies, the things you expect. Right. From a mafia show. We got a lot of that in this episode right off the bat. And I was reading this a lot in some other people's speculation. I think that's probably why this is the first and only time that we get that intro before the credits. Now, what did you think of that? What did you think about having something before the credits?
At first, I didn't even realize it till the song started playing. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that just happened. Because normally it's always going right into, like I said, the song that feels right after you hear the HBO sound. You always expect it still to kick into that song afterwards. So I thought it was cool in this place here because it really immediately sets the tone for the whole series. Like that scene of them in the back of the Bing, like that's what you picture when you think of The Sopranos, the scenes happening in that room or in, you know, or in Satriali's. So
no, absolutely. And that's such an iconic image and such an iconic part of the beginning part of The Sopranos is all of those dudes hanging
those
out.
guys too.
Those guys. And it's with before Tony becomes boss and really isolates himself. This is him in the midst of all of his people, even admitting out loud things like what the guy's saying on the television is correct about the mafia. That oh yes, we've lost a line of, you know, respect and understanding what the old Dons knew.
Right.
And this is where Tony's a hypocrite. And we start this right off the bat with where Tony is romanticized, but he's also shown very truly to be a freaking hypocrite that I said it at the beginning, that 46 Long leads to the suit that he took. And he's still what he should have done, like the old Dons would do. The mistake happened. Jackie ruled on it. You give everything back to Junior. And then when they do it again, you give everything back to Junior at first. But then Sil's like, come on, Tony, can't we keep these? And Tony's just like, yeah, because he's part of the problem. Tony might think he's the last of the gun heroes, you know, the last true mafia guy in the world. But really, he's one of the worst. He's one of the problems with what the guy's saying at the beginning. And it just comes all full circle in the entire series.
Yeah, and you see him also like that time, and there's another time too, but we'll talk about it later about him. Part of it though is I think he's screwing with Junior. I don't think if that was, let's say it was Jackie's truck, okay, or something like that he's necessarily going to take that from him. But he's also trying to stick it to Junior at the same time, like do the right thing and, you know, give him a hug to his face, but then also at the same time try to screw him a little bit. He does the other thing too, which we'll talk about when Christopher gives him the money. Like he's like, let me talk to him and see if I can get it down to 10. And you see him immediately take the money and put it inside of his jacket too. So
absolutely. So it is a really awesome, and a couple of firsts that we're going to talk about this episode.
Oh God. Yeah. Right there. Paulie right away with this. You hear what I told him? And he's like making fun of Christopher's. He does that all throughout the whole series. You know, he's making fun of Christopher's mother.
Here we go, Matt. You on it?
I might take a fucking limo in Paris.
Like you were ever in Paris, Paul.
I went over for a blowjob. Your mother was working the bonbon position at the Eiffel Tower. So, do you hear what I told him? I went over for a blowjob. Your mother was working the bonbon position at the Eiffel Tower.
So yeah, it's right from the beginning, and that I was going to say that too. This episode really is the birth of Paulie in a lot of ways too. Paulie is Paulie in this episode, and
from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, and he has some of his most iconic lines in the episode. And one more I want to get into, and we'll graze over it when we get into the episode. This one,
fucking Italian people.
Oh yeah,
what? Fucking espresso, cappuccino. We invented this shit, and all these other cocksuckers are getting richer.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
It's not just the money; it's a pride thing. All our food, pizza, calzone, buffalo mozzarella, olive oil. These fucks had nothing. They eat puzzi before us. But this is the worst.
This is espresso shit.
Take it easy.
Yeah, and it's just Paulie.
I wrote that entire quote down. Like the only quote I wrote from the whole show, beginning to end, was that. I watched it 3 times. I'm like, that's the most Paulie thing in the world.
It really is. And it sets it right apart that you realize that you're in a different sort of universe in the normal mafia world. Yeah. You have people that are, in threat of saying it a better way, are kind of meta and can kind of look at things from a grander perspective of the mafia. And it's just really awesome. We also get Adriana's for the first time this episode. Big Pussy makes a Rockford Files reference, which David Chase worked on the Rockford Files. It's the only episode with the feature, the teaser, or pre-credit sequence. It's directed by some director that's first time that works in the show, obviously, and he directs a lot of the big episodes. Also, Brendan Fallone, Jackie Priel Sr., Georgie, and Mikey are all. This is the first time that we see them in this episode. So here we go.
Hold on. Are we still at the first thing?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna.
The other thing is you got Sil doing his Pacino, which he does like 9 times in that episode.
Worldwide Horror says Paulie is the shit. I want to see Paulie when he was younger. And I think if we are going to get a Sopranos property again, it will probably be some sort of flashback. And what's cool about if we ever got the Johnny age, Paulie was around there too, so we would see Paul. pretty much any age of The Sopranos, whether it's the future, whether it's the past, whether it's anything in the present, we will see Paulie, because Paulie's the cockroach that survives everything. So as we said, the episode begins with Tony, Paulie, Silvio, and Christopher watching the documentary on John Gotti. The host is talking about the mafia stuff. We kind of already talked about the stuff. Paulie changes the channel, but Tony yells at him and says, turn it the fucking back on. I want to watch this. What's interesting is they start talking into the whole thing about what's wrong with the mafia that we already kind of talked about. And Tony asks Silvio to cheer him up, which is we get our first Godfather thing. And Paulie, we get Paulie just being Paulie right away. This guy was his name, the characters on the TV, his name was Rizzo, a soldier in the Genovese family. And anyway, so what's interesting to note in this scene, without getting too into it, because Christopher and Pussy get into this whole cloning thing, but Pussy quickly changes the subject here. Just to think about what comes later, I think they already had this in place. Pussy completely decides to change the subject in this situation. You have something playing in the background, Matt?
No, it's my phone. Let me just turn it off. Hold on.
But yeah, Pussy completely fucks the situation up and changes the subject to talk about cloning, which is really interesting in the fact that what comes later with finding out that Pussy was a rat, that he's really eager to change the subject here. And we get again the primetime shit that we deal with, as Matt was saying at the beginning, with the Soprano guys going back and forth, what you expect, what you get with your normal friends. Like if we're hanging out and playing a game of poker, how we talk to each other. Silvio and Paulie giving each other shit, talking about cloning, talking about Tony's like, I told my son, you can only make a life. And talking about Princess Diana being whacked. It's just a really awesome scene, and to the point where it leads up to the television saying that the mafia is over and they're counting their money. And Tony kind of looks scared in this situation when they start talking about the mafia's over, everyone's going to be rats. And then he turns to Sil one more time and he says, give me the quote. Just when I try to get out, they claw me back in. So anything else you want to say about that opening scene, Matt?
No, I don't know what this next thing is I wrote, so I don't think so.
Okay. So then we get right in. Oh, I did want to mention that I watched the preview for this episode, like what aired in between episode 1 and 2. And it was interesting. It was like very comedy, like jazz music stuff that you get, find in like an online like royalty free music. And it was like Christopher hijacks, but the wrong truck, and it like underlines wrong, and then it goes Tony talks and gets angry, and it like edits it like almost like a comedy, like straight up comedy, and then there's Livia. Oh my goodness, Livia! Ha ha ha! This week on The Sopranos, it's kind of weird how it all sets up. It's almost a
where is that? That's the like from the end of the first season, for the end of the first episode,
or like previews for next week on The Sopranos for this episode.
All right, so from like the week before, though, they'd probably like, will they play what's happening next week or like then?
Right, exactly. Like you can see on HBO Go, they have the
right.
You can watch like what the preview was for next week, and it was weird. It was very comedy, and it didn't say anything. Like even the scene with Jackie, it like played up on the scene where Jackie was like, maybe I should name a successor. And then Junior and Tony like looking back at each other. Oh, I'll rent you grumpy old men. Like it like focused on that line, like all the comedy points. It like hit, but none of the other stuff. Just made it very, very silly. Lois is the name of the head of the Indian mafia. Is Papa Don. You guys in the chat, you cracked me up. Okay, so later that night, we get the truck driving down the road. We get Christopher jacking the truck of DVD players. And we get our first introduction to Brendan Falone. What do you think of Brendan, Matt?
Oh, first of all, it's incredible this episode how dated you see everything is. Like his outfit, he looks kind of like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. Through the whole thing, that's just like how he looks. He's wearing that ridiculous jumpsuit. Yeah, so they beat that guy up relentlessly, and he's supposed to be like a dipshit from the beginning that you don't like. He's like Mikey. He's one of the few characters that's immediately like unlikable.
It's so funny that you said that, Matt, because I agree. He's almost like The Sopranos does something. It repeats generations, and it kind of makes the generational version of each character that has the same attitudes and the same idiosyncrasies as the next generation, it kind of sets them up to be, you know, if you copy a copy, it's lesser.
Right.
Multiplicity thing. And it's like with Brendan is like Mikey, but he's even more of a dick than Mikey. And you have the same thing with like Jackie Jr. later on trying to do what Tony did, you know, and his partner trying to do what Tony did. And he's just a watered down version of a couple people. And obviously our good friend AJ is just a constant douchebag.
Thank God there was like almost no AJ in this episode. That was what was amazing. It was like he had one scene with fat little AJ, and that was it.
Two scenes with that fuckwad. And ultimately it was I like AJ a lot more in these early seasons. It limits my hate. I think a little bit more of my Soprano family hate was on Meadow in this early season, but it switches for me, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting also to mention that AJ, because this the second episode was shot so much further past when the pilot was shot, AJ looks a lot older, or he's noticeably a little older. So as you can hear, the tick, 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 tick going away from the clock.
We have 5 minutes left. That was great.
Yeah, that's a good podcast. See you guys later. So Chris pops up and he holds a gun. Yes, we get this whole Christopher, and it's a funny line. The last line to really talk about in this scene was the guy goes, "Well, you need to tie me up. I can't be unscathed." And they're like, "Oh, you want to be scathed?" And then they beat the shit out of him. Excuse me. So here we go with one of our side stories of the episode. And basically, when we start to learn about Carmela as a manipulator and Carmela using...
Why are you're just a sexist. Why do you hate Carmela so much? The first episode, all you did was attack Carmela too.
I don't hate Carmela. Let me make one thing straight. I think Edie Falco is an amazing actress because of the way she plays Carmela, because I think Carmela is the biggest hypocrite. I don't think it has anything to do with sex. I think she just wants to play. I don't like it when people try to play both sides of their ass like Carmela does. She tries to take the high and pious route, but she uses the mafia thing anytime it suits her own needs. And I feel like I have to call her on her bullshit.
You're insane, but that's fine. I don't think that about her at all. She's like, she was barely even in this episode. She was in, I mean, when she talks to Livia at her house after the whole, you know, the mushrooms, and that first scene when Tony comes downstairs. You don't think she's essentially mentally cuckolding Livia a couple of times in this episode when she's like, "You can come live in my house. Of course you can, Livia." She's just showing her that Tony is hers, and watch me totally make Tony do anything I want. Would you let Livia live in your house?
So we changed the subject. No, God fucking no, I would not let Livia live in my house. But this enters a bigger point of the whole entire episode, Matt. What point do you have to give up on your mother? Like what point is like what Tony says, but she's my mother? Like, do you have to take care of your mother if she's this toxic? What do you think about that?
If you're an old school Italian guy, you do. I wouldn't. All right. That's me. And so I'm an asshole, I guess.
But your mother's very nice.
Okay. Please. I'm not going to start venting about my mother now. But yeah, I mean, to him, he has that whole sense of duty that I don't have. You and I are like, we were not from that generation or lifestyle. So I get why he does it. There are people. My sister's boyfriend, not Michelle, the other one, he's the most Italian guy I've ever met in my life. He would totally be like that with his mother. He's Italian to the point of like being in this show. So yeah, I could see him doing it. But
okay. So I mean, I guess I don't hate Carmela. She's probably one of my favorite characters on the show. And I think she and Tony are obviously the two most iconic parts of the show when it really comes down to it, especially by the end. Season 4, especially, Carmela's at like next level of awesome as a character, and just Edie Falco's acting. Worldwide Horror said, "You said Carmela was worse than Cersei last episode. I think Cersei is 10 times worse than Carmela." Okay, different kind of world, but oh gosh, I'm gonna live to rue that day I said that. I think that Cersei. I think the reason why Carmela is more dangerous is because Carmela is smarter. I think that's what I guess the point I was trying to go on. Where Cersei works a lot on emotion, Carmela is like very calculating in my perception.
She's the most sane woman in the show. Look at the rest of them. Tony's like all of Tony's gumas. His sister is insane. His mother's insane. She's the sane one there. And well, Meadow's a kid in the beginning of the show.
One of the best names I've seen in a while, McDicker96 says, "Carmela deserves no sympathy. She made a choice." And okay, and I guess if we're comparing Livia to Carmela, it's apples and oranges. Carmela is somebody that made a choice, and I think on some level moderately regrets the choices that she made to lead her to this point, because she thought it would be a more glorified lifestyle, but she could not. And it goes to a deeper question that we can ask about Carmela throughout the series: is Tony right about her? Could she not live a normal lifestyle with the other guy she should have married, that she felt like she should have married?
Yeah.
Would she truly be unhappy in that situation without the power that Tony gives her? Again, I hate to say it because I'm not a big fan of prequels. This is where a Sopranos prequel may help. It would be interesting to look to see what Carmela was like before she met Tony.
How old were they when they got together? Do you know?
She was very young.
remember.
I think I'm trying to remember back to if Tony hooked up with Artie Bucco's wife in high school. They must have known
That's
each
the
other.
next episode too, right? If you watch the preview of the next one, I think that happens right away.
So I'm pretty sure we'll learn more about that as we go on. So we get this whole scene that Carmela basically convinces Tony to help AJ's teacher, who has his Saturn stolen from school, and
That's how you know how old the show is. He drove a Saturn.
And I love how Meadow leaves the room once Carmela starts talking about pussy. I guess my problem with Carmela is vis-a-vis through Meadow is I have the same problem with her Meadow has, that she's a fucking hypocrite.
Yeah. Okay.
And that she wants to play this pious thing. And every time she uses the mafia for her advantage, but no, shh. I'm better than this. You're going to hell when you die. That's the difference between me and you. So I guess that's where it is.
My favorite part about that scene, and it's only because it's like one of the best parts of the show. Tony comes downstairs in that robe, and if I picture anything that you see over and over again, Tony walking downstairs, and it's like one of the best acting jobs he does, because when not that episode, but usually he's got that. He's generally like exhausted from the night before, and you can feel it when he comes down the stairs wearing that robe in the morning. All right, I got to go back to bed.
And we talked a lot about Tony's accent not being right on, and
it's fine in this one.
Again, we said this about a few characters, and you said it right at the beginning, and you're right, Matt. This episode is the Sopranos ground running. It's pretty much everybody's everybody except for the kids that grow into different people. But I mean, Carmela and Livia were really strong in the pilot, and so were people like Pussy when he had time, and Sil and all those. I mean, but really, Tony and Paulie, who become such the two most, you could say, important members of the family. Christopher too, but Christopher was very much Christopher in the first episode.
Right.
Become who they are in 46 long, and really who they are for the rest of the series. Except, again, The Sopranos isn't the normal show where the characters actually evolve a little bit, except for Paulie. He doesn't really evolve. So anything else we want to say about this scene, Tony? It's worth mentioning that I do have something that, if we have time at the end, I'll look at an alternate script before it was edited heavily. That in that scene is a lot more of Carmela being a little bit more manipulative with Tony about
anything that you can find to make her look more manipulative. I know that's your thing now, I guess. Like you have proof, you have hidden proof of how manipulative Carmela was. I love it.
I know I have actually in the first draft of the script, but in the first draft of the script, it's also worth mentioning that I'm reading a lot of these, and in the first draft, there's a lot more Tony being blatantly racist that gets taken out in the final version.
Well, there was still a lot of racism in this
episode. No, there is, but I feel like they even curbed it a little bit, maybe because of HBO, and maybe because they wanted people to like Tony, and he becomes much worse as time goes on. They let more of that out of Tony. So we continue. We go to and then we get our first Bada Bing, and Pussy and Paulie are hanging out, and Christopher comes in and says, Tony tells the bouncer and says, the modern day has come to the Bing, and bringing them DVD players. And this is where we get our first interaction between Tony and Georgie. And that's something that comes back several times in the beginning half of the series. And why is Georgie even working there? I mean, I'm sure there's a story. Maybe his dad was a part of Tony's crew, or connected to Tony's crew, or he's just Sil's bartender. But Tony hates this guy because he is freaking useless. You can't even use the phones.
No, and that's what's so crazy about, like, right there, you said the DVDs and then the phone with Georgie, like, technologically how old this show is at this point. I can't, he's like, they're comparing laser discs and DVDs. Like, it's absurd.
And what's funny about it is that Tony and Paulie are, as we get into that scene, you're right, that's where we get into, they go outside and they get the DVD players. But and Brendan's like, I can come and hook it up at your house. But they're Tony and Paulie are on the side that laser discs are better.
Right.
They're like, I don't see many difference between the laser discs. There's more titles on laser discs than there are DVDs.
Yeah, and the DVD, he's like, yeah, but the sound's a lot better. He's like, oh, I'll remember that next time I'm listening to Men in Black.
I love how he says Men in Black too.
Right. Again, that's how old this friggin' thing is. It's like Men in Black is the hot movie.
There's
also, you need to see in HD, which they didn't even have that in HD.
And there's also a Spice Girls reference in the episode as well, like Spice World. What are you guys watching Spice World? And there's another reference to, there's a couple of other things like that, just to make sure you know the times. Even though Starbucks is very much a big part of where we are now, the explosions or the spreading of the Starbucks disease is definitely very 90s when the show came out.
Oh, yeah.
They had
late 90s. Like, that's when we got it in Swampscott. That's when it made it all the way out to the East Coast when we first started seeing it.
Exactly. And that seems to be where they focus on that in this episode too, with everything that we played with the Paulie thing. And with them calling it butt fucks, and because they don't actually say the name, and these things are popping up everywhere. Anyways, so they have this whole thing back and forth. Then they go inside, and he kind of tells Brendan to go fuck himself, and Christopher follows Tony in to be like, why do you hate Brendan? And Tony's like, he's an okay kid, but I don't like the methamphetamine. And then Georgie has the guy in the call, but he drops the call, and Tony's wicked pissed off because Georgie's an idiot. And him and Christopher are going back and forth, and Tony realizes he has to call his mother. So he calls Livia up, and again, this is one of the moments that got cut out of the script for some reason. She goes, I'm cooking mushrooms. And Tony says off camera or off to the side, what's with her and all those fucking mushrooms? They cut that line. There's a couple of other little lines here and there in this scene as well about Tony making references off about how hard Livia is to deal with. And in this same moment, we get a really funny interaction between him and Georgie, where she's like, let me put you on hold. And she's complaining about the answering machine. He goes, you remind me of my 80-year-old mother. She knows how to use the phones better than you. And it's interesting how much. Why do you think Tony hates Georgie so much?
Because he's an idiot. He doesn't. Again, I don't know why they have him there. Maybe he's the bouncer for the club. Like, I have no idea what his purpose is. I don't know. I mean, I agree. There's got to be some reason. I'm trying to remember because it's been a while. Yeah, who goes to work as a bartender at a strip club in the middle of the day? Like, it's not like there's a line of people out the door to get that job. You know what I mean? Like, it's noon. Who the hell's in the strip club anyways?
I want to say that we find out more about it in a future episode, because it's been a while since I've watched The Sopranos and I'm not watching ahead. When Tony really kicks his ass and he ends up quitting the Bang, I want to say when he visits him in the hospital, we get a little bit more of how he's connected to everybody. Yeah. I want to say maybe his dad or somebody worked for Tony's dad, wasn't a full-fledged member, but again, like him, like a friend, like an associate.
Yeah, it could be a friend of the Aprils or something like that.
Some crap like that. So Tony realizes he has to call his mom. We get this whole thing with Livia being like watching someone delivering a package.
Yeah, so you notice there that she's, I don't know if you saw it in the first episode as much, that she's mentally like incompetent at that point. I don't think in the first one, she's just like whining and kind of old and he's trying to put her in a home. But this one here, like, she's supposed to go turn the heat down on the mushrooms and instead goes, like, starts watching the woman across the street, who happens to be black, because that seems to be Livia's thing, saying, what is she stealing now? And she completely forgets that A, she's trying to deal with the mushrooms, and B, she has Tony on the phone. And after she goes and sees the mushrooms, she picks the phone up and goes, who is this again? Like, you realize at this point here that she's actually lost her mind and needs help.
It's worth mentioning, Matt, that again, in the first draft of the script stuff I've read, they initially...
Carmela poisoned the mushrooms, I'm sure, Phil. That's what happened.
No, they initially wanted to have Livia have to have the dementia test at this point, like when they go through the whole thing about her running over her friend. In the original draft of the script, they take her to the hospital and have her assessed to have early onset dementia, and that's why she gets put. That's why Tony's like, I can get a power of attorney over you. There's still stuff that carries over from that point because they actually do the test. Then they end up bringing that back later, but they initially had wanted to do that then. Mick Dicker says, love your name, Mick Dicker. I think Georgie is supposed to be like a fat, dumb, lovable version of Tony. They even look the same. Maybe that's a good point, that we get a feeling that as time's gone on, Tony's turned a lot harder, that at first he was just like a weed dealer that had a crew of buddies and friends. Maybe Georgie was connected to him at that stage when Tony was a lot more laid back and kind of like had hippie-like tendencies, and kind of just carried over through with him. And now Tony's a little bit more, militant in his mindset, and a little bit more on this stretch of everyone's a pussy now except for me, or everyone, all these whining guys that are, the happy wanderer, as he says later on. And Georgie's the perfect example of that.
After the whole thing happens with Livia, like, you see the stress build. There's like 15 things going on at once. There's the guy that was supposed to call. I forget what the hell his name was. Not Fletch, but it sounds like that. Serge, right. And then he's got Georgie being Georgie, and then his mother, and then I don't know what do they come in and talk to him about from
Christopher's yelling at him about Brendan stuff, about why you're being rude to Brendan. He's a good earner, blah, 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 blah. So Christopher's giving him all that shit. So eventually, as we said, Livia realizes the wall's burning. She can't function enough to get the fire extinguisher. And Tony, reasonably to say, Tony was freaking out, but you see why Tony is who he is and good at things like this, even though he can't continue to live like this. You see why Tony is a good gangster, because he can multitask really, really well, and it's one of his strong points. He remembers things, and he has like a good mental Rolodex, to use a really outdated term. It's
appropriate that it's outdated with everything that's outdated.
Everything that we're talking about. It's true. And Tony just immediately delegates everything, calls Carmela, and I love the scene with Carmela, which I like Carmela in the scene because she steps up, but she's sitting there doing her nails, and Tony calls her, is like, hey, can you go? My mother has a fire in the house. Can you go over there? And she's like, oh. And he goes, I know you're busy, honey. And she's like, I'm busy. Sure. And on his way out, the other thing we forgot to mention in that scene, Pussy gets in his face and goes, I love it when Pussy gets in my face, and is like, it asks about the license plate number, and he tells him to call Carmela. So then we get Livia's house, and the fire's being put out. We already talked a bit about this scene. Carmela and Livia have a great back and forth. I love these two when they have scenes together because, again, I said it earlier, Carmela gives Livia this attitude, like I assume Livia gave her when she first met her, this cuckold sort of thing where it's like, I'm owning you, like looking at her like, Tony's mine now, ha 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 ha. And there's this subtext to the scene. And this isn't about hating Carmela. This is about a lot of shit she says about Livia throughout the series. That woman's toxic. Your father's the problem. That woman's not as fragile as you think. She's playing a game with Livia back and forth here. And I like it. I like it a lot. But it is worth mentioning, this happens later in the episode, but one of these Sopranos didn't cross their T's and dot their I's things. In this episode, Tony mentions and Carmela mentions that Livia is going to pick up her parents. And later in season 3, when we finally meet Carmela's parents and Livia dies, we get a line from Carmela that says, or from Tony that says, oh, your parents will finally come around now that the dragon lady's dead. So it's something just worth mentioning, and that we'll talk about later as time goes on, that the Sopranos, they weren't sure how bad they were going to make Livia at the beginning. And I think they discovered it as they were going, because in this episode, potentially she was picking up Carmela's parents. And
not to mention, why in the world, you're right. I didn't even realize that. That's because her parents are totally like competent people too. They seem a lot younger than Livia. They're totally competent. He drives all the time. Why in God's name would they have some old lady go pick them up and drive them around?
That they hate. That they won't
hate, right.
That they won't really come by the house, and apparently is what we find out in season 3. The reason why we haven't seen Carmela's parents is because they hate Livia so much that they won't come around, even though Tony for half that time pushes her out of his life. And I forgot to mention, too, we get a lot more Junior in this episode as we're about to get to it. So we get to Pussy at the body shop, and there's not too much to say about the scene. They just go through here and there to try to find more information about the AJ's car. It's just, again, interesting to note the overall theme of this episode about how low's the mafia gone, that Pussy through this whole situation is just like nonplussed by this. Like, I can't believe I'm the guy that has to go around doing this shit. And it's worth mentioning, too, that again in the other script, as I'll talk about it when we get to the scene, but there's a lot more in the thrown away material of Tony being really mean to Pussy, like really mean to him, like to the point where in that scene with the suit coats, when they're picking out the suit coats, that Tony runs over and like cuts up the coat that Pussy wants just so he can't get because Tony picks out a suit and Paulie says something to him like, "Oh, Tony, you already have that suit. You should give that to Pussy." And then Tony walks over and gets scissors and cuts up the suit and goes, "Fuck that. Pussy can't have it." And because they're the same size. It's like a couple of things like that are put in there that I guess are more to lead you to believe and makes me think that they knew right from the beginning that they were going to have Pussy be a rat. And they were setting this stuff up of why Pussy would actually do this because he feels disrespected.
Turn on him. Yeah.
Why he might be open to actually turning on him. So okay, we get the whole thing with AJ's car. We get then we get Paulie and Pussy together, which is amazing. These two together. I love Paulie and Christopher together. I think a bit more than Christopher with Pussy or Paulie with Pussy. But when Pussy and Paulie are my favorite group of Tony's people. But Pussy and Paulie and Christopher, excuse me, it gets confusing.
You just wanted to say Pussy as many times as you could.
I wanted to say Pussy as many times as I could. But Pussy and Paulie, for the beginning half of the series, they have a very interesting relationship. And it's explored a lot to the point where when they first think he's a rat, that, you take off your clothes, Pussy. Come on, take off your clothes, Pussy. They have a fun relationship. So we talked a lot about this scene. We already played the quote. This is where we find out there's a lot of these stores that are already spread around. Paulie, do you want to read your quote since we already played it?
No, you already said the whole thing because now I think I missed a word or two. But he starts naming this stuff off like, buffalo mozzarella, all the things that like he's just horrified that they're raping the Italian language or the Italian culture, I guess is what it is. But it's the most, again, he had one line in the first or two lines in the whole first episode. And here you already have like that first scene about, you hear what I told them in the opening scene. And then this part here, which is, it's incredible.
And it really is. And okay, so then we get the point that the two of them are off on a mission trying to find the Saturn. So we go over to Tony meeting with Dr. Melfi, and Tony tells Melfi that about the whole situation that happened with the fire and that Livia's finally agreed to have someone come in to help her. It's a Trinidadian woman. And they go into this whole big thing about, as again, basically what we were talking about, that, and this is the only question I want to get from their conversation going back and forth, where we talked about, I think we talked about this before the show too, where is Tony's acting like he's doing the wrong thing because he's not letting her live with him, but blames it on Carmela. Who do you think is the one that really won't let Livia live with them? Or do you think it's a combination of both of them being like,
Listen, Carmela invited her when they sat down, and I know you're always looking for.
Do you think that was a bullshit? Do you think that was do you think that was a bluff? Do you think
I think Carmela would have done her duty as a nice Italian daughter-in-law to, whether she wanted to or not, let Livia live in the house. I think part of it is that she knew Livia wouldn't actually go there.
Right. It was, again, he was bluffing a little bit.
Right. And part of this is also, but when Tony's talking to Melfi, like he wants to be able to blame someone else. He wants to not have to take the blame for the fact that he can't stand his mother. But Melfi also is trying to turn him against his mother the whole time. Like she's
from go.
There's the other part later on that we'll talk about after the car incident. But
I agree with you. And I think you treaded on a really important point about Tony, that Tony is always somebody that blames other people for things. He never can take full responsibility when mistakes. He always has to. Someone says it later on. I believe it's Carmine Sr. says it later on. He goes, the Sopranos, the good people, but they always have to vilify somebody. And I think that's true specifically about Tony. And it's true to Junior to a certain extent as well. He always has to have someone who's fucking him over and always working to do that. So you think it's ultimately Tony that won't let Livia live with them?
Oh, of course. He'd go crazy. He can't stand being with her for 3 minutes.
I tend to agree with you. I think it's more Tony. So then we get Tony going to Livia's house, and we get his interaction with the home service worker, and she's like, Livia, your son's here, and he goes, you know, I don't mind. Or what's he say? It's something like, no ganja during the day, or something.
Right. Because she like sounds Jamaican, like her accent kind of. So he turns that into like no ganja while you're here.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just crazy. And then we get a great Tony and Livia scene where which I think the key moment in this scene that I think is pretty much hilarious is when she starts going, she's stealing. You know that really nice statue that Aunt Satine, the plate from the restaurant?
Plate, yeah, the plate.
But she specifies the plate that your aunt stole. She says the plate that your Aunt Satine stole, or she said took from the restaurant. So she's thinking that someone stole something that her sister already stole. It's just funny how Livia's mind works.
Yeah, but then at that point, he's now reinforcing again how much she's lost her mind, because he's like, oh, you sure you didn't give it away like you've given away everything else that we had?
Right. And there's another line in this scene that's connected to a scene that was cut where Tony says, you give our cousin, I forget who the cousin's name.
It's like Cartier jewelry or something that he gives away.
And you give me a massage chair.
Yeah.
That's from a scene that was cut earlier in the episode where Livia forces on him the massage chair, gives him a massage chair. That's one of those lines that just kind of got stuck. That was left.
Yeah, because I was like, what the hell is the massage chair? But okay,
yeah,
I have no idea what he was talking about.
There's a cut scene from the script where Livia is giving away stuff, and she goes, "And you, Tony, you're gonna get this massage chair. You need it. You have stress in your life. I hear you having panic." It's like a whole thing where she goes she demasculates him in front of somebody by talking about his. I think might be in front of the Trinidadian woman about how he is going to therapy and how he needs stress relief, and then gives him the massage chair. And so then we get the first line that Livia threw this all. Then we get back to you come to the nursing home, you come with us, back and forth. And Livia tells Tony that she suddenly becomes very clear-minded and says, Tony Jr. called the house and he sounded very agitated, which is an ongoing theme. So we cut over to Satriale's meat market and we meet Tony.
Which is now Satriale's, like it should be.
It is. And we have a sit down with Tony and we get Jackie Aprile Senior, yes, who is our acting boss. We also get a reference, not too many references that we do get to this, but that there is the Mayo family mafia, that the old man's in prison.
Right. And see, I had totally forgotten that Jackie wasn't even the real boss, that he was the acting boss.
Boss. Now, what I wonder, and maybe someone in the comment section or someone listening to the podcast on the audio feed can answer this, or I can look into this a little bit more for next week, the structure of the Soprano family in the sense of Tony's dad. Is this the guy that was in charge after Tony's dad, or is this guy always in charge?
Tony's dad was never in charge.
Tony's dad was just a captain.
Tony's dad, I believe, was probably the equivalent of
a captain and underboss,
like Paulie, or was he more like junior? You think? I don't know.
I see. I'm thinking he was more like a junior, maybe, or more like what we do know from the first episode. That's where how much is the pilot canon to The Sopranos, because we find out that Johnny became a head of a crew before Junior did, and was younger, but proceeded further in the mafia than Junior did. And then he also makes the reference that, yeah, my dad never got as high as I did. Tony says that, but that's when they still thought Tony was the boss. Right.
First one, right.
It's interesting. I'm guessing that Tony was probably that Tony's father was probably the captain of his own crew, and probably got to that point, was one of the top earners for the DeMeo family, and became maybe acting boss at times.
So he was probably under Jackie's. Is it Jackie's dad?
No, I'm not sure. And again, we'll get a little bit more into this when we get to the flashbacks episodes that we get for Tony's dad, because I forget that, but I'm sure we'll get a little bit more information about that then. So we get this whole thing about Junior and Tony going back and forth about the stolen DVDs. Tony's really antagonistic, as Matt was mentioning earlier. Some part of this is just his enjoyment of agitating Uncle Junior, and you get the feeling, again, you learn a lot about Tony in this episode. You didn't see a lot of this in the first episode, how much of a brat Tony is. I love Tony Soprano, but he is a fucking brat, and he is an antagonist. He's Bugs Bunny to a certain extent. They run it unofficially, like when Tony ran it unofficially under Junior, says McDicker. And I guess it's worth mentioning too, if we talk a lot about, future stuff about Phil Leotardo's feelings towards the Soprano family. He says they're not a family. They never were a family. They're just a glorified crew. There's no organization over there. They don't take the oath the same way. They don't do anything. So it's worth mentioning that McDicker probably is correct in the sense that it's always been a glorified crew more than a family, that they call themselves a family, but really they're just a powerful crew that's been able to interact.
Right. And they don't run a major city. They run part of Jersey.
Yeah, they run one part of Jersey.
Right.
So North Jersey, I believe it is. So Tony and Christopher have Tony and Junior have a back and forth about Christopher. Ultimately, Jackie Aprio really sides right in the middle and says, pay restitutions to Junior, we'll all be good. Tony's like, okay, done, no big deal. And Junior makes one more comment about Christopher being a little bitch and kind of moves on the subject. And Jackie also says, you Sopranos, always blowing up your minds, always, going crazy. And I do want to mention that I forgot how quickly this progressed. Like in my memory of this, some of this stuff didn't happen till later. And it's interesting just how quickly season 1 of The Sopranos, you get right into the overall story arc for this season.
See, I remember that scene in the coffee shop so well that I thought it must have happened later on.
Yeah, me too. And it's, again, these moments are so
because it's so Paulie. I'm like, that couldn't have happened right away because it's so Paulie for him to do that.
Yep, absolutely. And also Tony Junior makes a comment about Livia, glad someone's there to help him. And what's very interesting too that I think in this moment is Junior uses this opportunity after Tony leaves, and Jackie Sr. is Tony's best friend essentially, and Junior uses that opportunity to talk shit about Tony hiring a Trinidadian woman for Livia. Like, come on, Junior. Like, he's not the person you talk shit to about Tony. At least that's why it's all getting back to Tony. I mean, Jackie seems fair, but he's also obviously biased to Tony because of how they came up.
Yeah, but I think Jackie, and again, I got to wait and see how this unfolds. I think he is very old school too, in the sense though of probably what's right and what's wrong, going back like 100 years.
I think you're right, Matt, and I think that's probably why Jackie from the people of Tony's generation, Tony, Jackie, Paulie was in the generation before, Sil, and eventually Ralphie, who's supposed to be around but isn't around. Like all these people of this generation, there's a reason why Jackie rose quicker
than
everybody else. And Jackie is the acting boss. And so we continue. Oh, then we get our scene with, speaking of the Bugs Bunny, Tony Bugs Bunny going and antagonizing Mikey. And he hates Mikey. You can just tell right off the bat. He thinks this guy's a piece of shit, has no joke for him, has no fucks for Mikey at all. And him and Mikey, you can tell, kind of feels the same way. And I like that they introduced Mikey. I don't think he was as successful as other antagonists that they made for Tony, like Richie and Ralphie, I think was the best within the family. I don't know. I never really took Mikey that seriously. You
never got any idea of what his real character was about, though, either. He was just some guy that was put there to piss him off. Like, you learned a lot about Ralphie. Like, a lot of it's kind of creepy and you don't want to know it. And the same thing with even with Richie. But, Mikey's just immediately unlikable from the first second, though.
Exactly. Where the other two, you like them in a
you like Ralph, but there's a lot of depth to his character, and it's around for a while.
You like Joey Pants as an actor, so like you accept Ralphie for who he is. So then we get another scene at the coffee shop where they ultimately find the guy's name that they need to hunt out for the Saturn, and Paulie steals a coffee cup on his way out. Fuck this.
A coffee pot, like a big, like something that probably cost in Starbucks like $100.
I love it. I just love that moment when Paulie does that. It's hilarious to me. It's again
he's never going to use the coffee pot. He just does it out of spite. That's it.
It does. It's a spite steal. I like it. I support the spite steal there. So okay, then we get Carmela stopping by Livia's house, and we see the home care worker running out and saying, "That's it, I'm done." And Livia's like, these black people, I know how to talk to people. And it's interesting again to mention, if we go to the thrown away script, it's never actually dictated, even in the thrown away script, what what Livia says to her. It just says, cue Livia insensitive comment. But it actually doesn't, in the script, it seems to imply that it doesn't have to, it wasn't necessarily something racist. It was something about the woman's dead sister. Livia's name, there's one point when the woman calls Livia Olivia, and Livia gets pissed off about it. And the woman starts telling her about her dead sister or something, whose name is also Olivia. It's so good to take care of you, Olivia, because I'm my sister, Olivia. And then it says, cue horrible thing that Livia says. So it was something about her dead sister or something.
Yeah, but it could have been that they couldn't possibly be sisters because she's black or something like that. I don't know. Yeah,
something. Yeah, I'm willing to bet. I'm with you, Matt, that it was probably a combination of both. And doing it now. Okay, so I continue here. Let's continue. So the next morning, we see Tony taking a bunch of Prozac. He meets with Christopher and Brendan Falone. Christopher gets into his face, and we talked a little bit about the scene, talking about the restitutions. Tony tells him how much they want, and Christopher also gets into the whole positive visualization. Why am I getting fucked here? Really awesome Christopher stuff. I don't see you giving back your DVD players. And also gets into, have you talked about me being made yet? What I did last week when I killed that guy.
The books are closed.
Books are closed. That's some true shit. And this is where we get the line Kimosabi from Brendan, where Brendan, high on meth, obviously, talks shit about Jackie. And Tony picks him up and literally throws him out the door into a pile of pots and pans.
Right. And he's trying to even, I think what he said to him was like, we know you're the boss now, or something like that. Ever since he became Kimosabi, like, isn't that what he says? How he phrases it?
He said, "Yeah, we all know that you're running things.
Yeah,
since Jackie became a Kimosabi."
And he's trying to like pay Tony a compliment and suck up to him almost, right? He is obviously too stupid to realize that they're really good friends, and that obviously anything happened to Jackie is like,
it's one of those
drastic effect on Tony. So
it's one of those things, and we've all done it. You bring a friend that you think's funny, or it's like weasels his way to a situation he shouldn't be in. And I think I've been this friend in some situations. And someone just makes a joke that they shouldn't make, a really loud, obnoxious joke, trying too hard to connect in that situation, and it fails miserably. Hey, Tom, welcome, buddy. Welcome. Okay, so yeah, and ultimately Filoni gets thrown out of there. Then Paulie and we get Paulie.
No. Before that, you notice where Tony then immediately takes some of the money from the restitution.
Talk about that for a second here.
So that's part of what you talked about, like how Tony's like, let me see if I can talk him down to 10,000, and who knows what he ever says to Junior. You have no idea how that actually plays out. If he offers Junior 12,000, 10,000, 15, said all the kid had was 10, or what? Maybe Junior just told him. I don't even know who told him it was 15,000. Maybe Tony gave him that number and was really only half of that.
Yeah, I think that was probably it. Like Jackie probably said, "I'll give him $5,000." And Tony's like, "I'll take 15." Yeah. And yeah, we get Tony, and then we get Christopher and Brendan talking about how Tony just fucked them. So then we get at the address, Paulie and Pussy pull up. Oh, that was a tongue twister. Paulie and Pussy pull up with silenced pistols from the bag, and they knock on the door. It's Rezra. Who's there? It's Rezra. And they come in and they pull these guys up, and they ultimately rough these guys up and convince them to show them where the Saturn is. So we find out the Saturn's already been chopped up, and Pussy gets an idea. You guys climb over this. What's going to happen here is you guys are going to climb over this fence. What about the barbed wire? Fuck yourselves. Climb over the fence. You're going to steal those plates. One of you are going to stay with us. The other's going to go boost another Saturn. So you just see the power that Tony has, that just for his kid's teacher, people will go to this length to protect, to get a gift to Tony, essentially.
Right. And Tony's only doing it because he asked him in the beginning, what do you get in science? He goes, a D+. And that's why he decided to do it.
So we go to the Soprano residence, and Tony looks out the pool where the ducks used to be. This is our Meadow moment of the day. Meadow walks up and goes, "I still like your ducks." And Tony notes that you still look at the ducks, and she just says, "I'm not that into it." And again, Meadow is 10 times less annoying in this episode. She's not yelling all her lines. She's relaxing into it, and she had her plastic surgery. Not
still
that I could.
Not hot yet, though.
Still not quite there yet. She doesn't get that till like around season 5 and season 6.
And you're caught off guard by it. You're like,
holy shit, what is up with Meadow? And yeah, she ends up looking very nice by the end of the series. So Tony says he thought it was special for the ducks to come, but whatever. So then we get to Tony. We'd already talked about this scene. Tony asking when Livia's showing up, and Carmela tells Tony that Livia has to take her friend to the doctor's. She then has to pick her parents up and drive to her house. Tony then says he complains about Livia, but she goes all over the place and she drives your parents around. But whatever, we'll accept it. And
any excuse he has to say what a great person she is.
And we cue to downtown, Livia dropping off Fanny. Make sure you make a lot of noise in case someone's in the house, because you never can tell. And Fanny sees a newspaper in her driveway, and she bends over to get it. Livia, who's freaking out, backing up into a road, which is dangerous. That bothers me too. And she doesn't realize that the car is still in drive, and she hits the accelerator, and she runs right into Fanny, who slams up against the window and goes down. So again, in the original script, we have a lot more that happens after that, with them going to the hospital, dealing with the police and Livia having to take mental tests, telling the person to go fuck themselves, like lots of interesting stuff. So at therapy, we end up in the episode going right to therapy, where Tony tells Milfy that Livia broke her wrist, and Milfy's like, what about the other woman?
Right. It's like, that's so weird the way that Tony brings it up like that, you know.
Hip. Then we start talking about this is hilarious that Milfy kind of implies that I like how Tony calls her on this, because Milfy does kind of imply that Livia did it on purpose.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
And Tony's like, you trying to say that my mother wanted to do that? Like, and he's like, no, it's fucked up that you would even say that I would think that. But you did say that, Milfy. And this is when Tony talks about, can you remember one good story about your mom? Or was that last week? Where it's like,
no, that was this one.
That was like, yeah.
Remember like one happy thing that happened with your mom, one memory of that.
Well, my dad.
Oh, no. It's one positive, loving moment with your mother. And he ends up telling some story about how they all laughed at his father or something who fell down or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
Not like a loving thing at all. It's just a time they had a good time and he laughed.
Oh, we got a texter. Texter says, thanks guys for the Sopranos reviews. Love the Sopranos recaps. It's good to think about the show and good an excuse to rewatch the episode. Quick question. Do you think Livia really is crazy, or she's been making it up the whole time? I think Livia is, I think both things can be true. I think her mind is gone, but she still is able to make certain conscious decisions. She doesn't have full blown out a dementia in the way that I've seen like personal, like my mother does or something. But she's definitely losing certain parts of her brain that shut off certain switches. But maybe she never had that. Maybe she's just always been.
She obviously has some sort of personality disorder, like hands down. Like she's a sick, twisted woman.
But do you really think she's losing her mind as much as it seems, or is this just her not giving a fuck?
Well, I mean, the whole thing with the mushrooms, I don't think that was intentional. She literally lost her mind at the point when she's looking out the window at the male woman across the street. Right. And then picks the phone up and goes, who is this? In a moment when her house is catching on fire. I think at that moment, if she was sane, she would have acted sane.
And I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a different level. I think
not sane, but
capable.
Right.
I think she's not. I think she's competent enough to run a house by herself, to live alone by herself and cook and clean. And like, it's the point where she goes, why do I need someone to help? Because you need someone to cook and clean and do all that stuff for you. And then you can thrive. And that's what we see later on when she finally does go to Green Grove and accepts it all and only complains when Tony's around. She ultimately, once she has everyone to do things for her, she thrives and becomes controlling and manipulates Junior and is very in control. But here, trying to run her own house and drive around and do all that, it's too much for her. So I don't think she's full blown to the point of someone that needs to be in a home, but she does need to be in an assisted living of some sort, or have a woman in living doing stuff for her, or like Janice eventually serves that role, or the one-legged woman.
Well, the dangerousness of, like, that's what we originally thought. Well, I don't need to get this about my grandmother, but like at some point it's like she's gonna leave something on the stove and forget it's there, and that starts a fire. You know?
No, absolutely. And I mentioned it briefly, like my mom with her dementia, like she had to get in the home when she couldn't answer the phone herself, when she couldn't do this or something, when she couldn't do all these little things, cook, clean, go to the bath, like all that sort of shit. And I think Livia's getting to that point. So Milfy talks about Green Grove. It's going to be a brave new step. It's Green Grove. That's beautiful. It's like what's the line? It's like
I forget. It's a something, and I don't get the reference either.
It's like a room at Cap and Teeves. I think it's a that was like the Queen Mary was another boat. I think it's just one of those one of those big early luxury line, luxury boats.
Yeah, because Tony says it later on, and they're like, she's like, she didn't know what it was, and Tony like didn't know what it was either. I think he tells it to his mother later on.
Quickly to go through this scene, we see Christopher, Adriana for the first time as Adriana, and they're outside the line waiting to get into a club. Again, in the original script, this goes much further. Brendan Filone pulls out a gun, uses Tony Soprano's name a bunch. Let me in. I work for Tony Soprano, a bunch of all that sort of shit. The Scorsese stuff was still in there. And surprisingly enough, I never knew this. That was not actually Martin Scorsese. That was an actor playing Martin Scorsese.
I figured it was Scorsese.
Me too. It's like a lookalike.
And all those guys know Scorsese, so it's not even like that much of a stretch because they were all in Goodfellas. Right.
That's actually not Martin Scorsese, which was very surprising. I learned in this on this rewatch when I was looking into reading the notes about it. So, anyways, the group's finally able to get in the club, and the scene again goes a lot longer with both of them doing some meth and talking shit about Tony. And why shouldn't we jack another truck? Let's jack a truck of suits. It's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. Christopher talks about there's no organization in the mafia because no one listens to, that everything's a mess. And so it's the Old West out here, so we might as well do it. We also get a very important shot of Adriana on the dance floor shaking her ass. I think that's very important for the future of the series. Christopher! And so the next day we see Tony sitting in Livia's room eating some Virginia ham.
He loved the ham.
And
that's actually where he finds out about the Cartier, was right there, because I wrote that down there about like that scene.
Worldwide Horror says Tony says the stuff that Melfi tells him that time in the series. Yeah, it's really awesome to how like Tony always tries to repeat what Melfi says to different groups to sound intelligent, but he always fucks it up. So Christopher notes that anyway, so next day Tony's eating the Virginia ham, eating it, and as you said, you never let me feed ya. And we already talked about the scene. This is where we talked about the jewelry, and Tony says that he got Josephine, your cousin Josephine, and because Carmela never showed interest in the jewelry, and you can't live alone anymore. This is where Tony goes into I can get a power of attorney and have you placed into a home. And this is the moment, Livia, you can stab me in my heart right now because it won't hurt more than what you just said. I know seniors that are inspiring. She just starts weeping. Cat in teeth style. It's just hilarious. Olivia she owns this character and she's just amazing in it. So then we get the next morning, and we're just going to talk briefly about this scene. Filoni comes to meet Christopher, and Christopher's waiting up for him and says, "Listen, I'm not going." I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry. I'm not. Don't worry. I'm going to take a pass. Maybe the problem with the mafia is no one listens to middle management. I think this is bad. I'm not going to go. And what's interesting to note here is Filoni's like, "Fuck you, coach. I'm going anyway. I don't give a shit." And later on, when Tony calls him out on his shit and says, "Well, did you offer advice or anything?" He did. He totally offered advice.
Yeah.
He told him not to go. He can't force him not to go. And I think that's just Tony giving Christopher a little shit when he didn't need. Christopher did the right thing.
Well, the difference was, though, Christopher's trying to rise up and wants to be a made man. He should have used better judgment right there if he's trying to actually do that. If he wants to be a boss someday, or not a boss, but if he wants to move up at all.
So what do you think the play, what play would Tony have been happy if Christopher contacted him right there at 6 a.m. and said, "I tried to talk."
Christopher says, "Dude, don't do this. This isn't the right thing. If you really want to get involved with this or be working for Tony someday, we got to not do this right now."
Right. But I'm saying I agree with you. That would have been
Tony's also his story. Like throughout the whole episode, he bleeds all of his fucking guys financially. Like they don't have any other money because he takes such a cut from everyone. You hear everyone gripe about it at some point.
Everybody. And he gives you this like, you can't say no to me. Like who's going to say no to me thing sort of vibe.
Meanwhile, he lives in this house that's so much bigger than everyone else's house.
That castle up on the street as it gets.
And that just shows you how big his dad ever got. His dad lives in the same size house that like Junior did. You know, the house that Livia's in is the house that they made. It's like a regular house in Saugus or something is what it is.
So a few hours later, we get the whole scene with Filoni and his friend Special K.
Filoni is Brendan, for anyone who's not
Yeah, Brendan Filoni and Special K, and they set up a roadblock to stop the next truck of suits. And the guy gets out. He's like, "I'm with your guy on the inside. Don't worry about me." And Brendan's like, goes to the guys, "Don't hold your gun sideways." And and
he still does it. He goes back and does it again.
It's hilarious. And then one of the guys gets in the car. We get a reference to Fisher Price in the scene. You can't drive a Fisher Price, and he
couldn't.
And they end up getting trying to make the driver actually move the truck. And one of them freaks out a little bit or just gets clumsy and drops the gun and it bounces. And they're like, "Hold your shit, man." And it ends up shooting the truck driver, which also gets spoiled on the preview for that week's episode. So you see that guy get shot for whatever it's worth. So you would have known that was coming if you were watching the episode live. But anyways, so he shoots that guy, and then he goes, holy shit, Junior Soprano is going to fucking freak out. Now, my question is, Brendan freaks out there and starts yelling about how Junior is going to have a hissy fit. Why would Junior be more pissed? Junior, what we know about Junior and what we know about the Mafia, they don't really care too much about non-soldiers or non-people in the family, protected people getting killed in this situation. I mean, he'd be a little bit more upset, but not much more upset just that he hijacked it, that he killed the guy. It's not that much of a fine line. You know what I'm saying? Like,
the only thing is that company, I think he says at one point, whatever the name of the company is,
Conley,
they pay him a lot of money for protection.
Oh, good point, Mac. Very good point.
But at the same time, still hijacking the truck is
almost just as bad. It's just
because he's still going to have to. Although he could have played it off, it was two black guys, so it's not tied into the Mafia, But either way,
yeah. But Brendan really freaks out, and he's freaked out about Junior. So then we go to Green Grove, and this is an amazing scene with Tony, Carmela, Livia meeting the Grove director Bonnie, and Olivia with the ultimate poker face through this entire scene, just doesn't even move. And this woman's like, "Are you happy to live us?" And Carmela is amazing in this scene too. "Oh my God, your belongings are here. When my grandmother had to live elsewhere, she didn't get to keep her belongings." It's so fucking funny. Johnny motherfucking Stark managed to catch another live show, Sopranos, the modern day Game of Thrones, in the sense of the same quality from the same amazing place as HBO. I agree with you. And we were talking about this last episode, how it is so much must-see TV at the time. Love you, Johnny Stark. Love you, Tim.
The only thing about this episode, this is off topic for a second, but it was a little choppy from scene to scene. There were some scenes where it was shot beautifully, where it has that great openness to a Soprano shot from a really cool angle.
Yeah.
But I think it's still because it's early on, they're getting the kinks out. And again, they have different directors for so many of the shows. I guess that's bound to happen.
I agree with you. Full on, like artistically, visually, and everything design-wise, starts getting into that home run zone in the beginning of season 2. Towards the end of season 1, beginning of season 2, they really find their rhythm of what's going on. You can say the same thing about Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that first season, when you watch it again now, you're like, "Ooh, how is this as amazing?" Because then you see what they reach artistically later on with it.
Yeah, like in season 2, it's just like, holy shit. And to me, it's not that season. It took me, it's part of it too is the rawness of that. I mean, we'll get into Breaking Bad when we get to Breaking Bad, but we'll talk about that later. So Bonnie assures Livia that she'll be excited when she gets there. Then she gives her a Italian proverb that, what's that mean? I'm trying to find what the notes of that.
It's something about time and patience turn the something, and then I stopped caring.
The mulberry leaf to silk.
Yeah.
And it's just, okay. Like, yes, inside a cocoon, inside a caterpillar, one day will become a butterfly. It's like the stupidest shit in the world. Yeah. And Livia calls it up. But it's interesting to mention this.
Yeah, of all the things that Livia could not possibly be impressed with, that's it.
Yeah. She's, again, Livia gives the I have no fucks to give kind of look. And Livia just isn't listening. And also Junior tries to call through. And Tony's like, "I don't want to talk to Junior." And he sounds really angry. "No, I don't want to talk to him." So then we go to
right, and Tony has no idea about the second truck jacking at this point, and him being killed or else.
Because we go back to the Soprano house, and Carmela asks Tony if he's all right. Tony says, "Thanks for the help." He says he's going to make some lunch. The phone rings, and it's Christopher, and he needs to talk to Tony. He says, "I need to talk to you from another line." So Tony goes and talks to another line, and he basically tells him, "Listen, don't be mad, but I thought Brendan hit Junior again." And so Tony ends up driving to the warehouse where the truck is, and Paulie, Pussy, and Silvio are all there. Tony's outside, and he's like, "You boys, you boys, you boys." And we talked about this a little bit where Christopher is saying, well, I stayed home, and Tony gives him a big speech about how we're talking about leadership. You should have given him more of you should have given him more advice, made sure he didn't go. Filoni's like, Brendan's like, well, it's the meth part of it's the crank. And Christopher's like, don't get us fucking killed. Shut up. And Tony's smiling. He's like, this is some good stuff though. And they ultimately, we talked about this a lot earlier, Tony decides to keep one of the racks of the suits for all of them and give the rest back to Junior. And the guy that's dead, you can poke him with a stick, but I'm pretty sure you're fucked. Let's jump in the chat for a second. Johnny says, fuck yeah. Tim says, The Sopranos, you don't need to cover every episode. You're right. It's like Game of Thrones in its day. Well, it's kind of the reason Game of Thrones came around. Johnny Stark, Sir Phil of House Epic Beard, first of his name, watcher of the shows, breaker of opinions. Hell yeah, buddy. Dude, you're awesome. I think Rome, great show that was before its time. Another HBO classic.
Yeah, the only problem with Rome is in order for them to keep it, like there was a certain amount of time when it was like it's a historical thing, so you can't do it forever. You can't make
the same thing about. There's a show that I would recommend to you, Matt, because I know you like history. I would watch Vikings, which is in the similar boat. It talks.
It's on A&E or History or something.
On the History Channel. It's especially season 1 in the most recent season. Season 2,
same sort of thing, fictional, but
yes, it's fictional, but romanticized version, so to speak, of basis of some real events. It's more historic than the average show like that because it's actually on History Channel.
But it's not like Rome. Like Rome, I actually learned Roman history because of watching Rome.
You learn I would say that, not to get too far in the Vikings tangent, I would say it forced me to research and learn more about the Viking Norse history than I ever have before, because it's enough. It treads around enough facts that makes you look it up in history books to wonder what the real stories are. Yeah, okay. And I think it does a decent job with that. And we do recaps of that too. And we get a lot of people that are history buffs that say, oh, okay, this is pretty accurate, but X, Y, and Z happened. So it's an interesting show to watch for that reason. But if you like history, I can't recommend it enough. Ragnar is sick, says Worldwide Horror. And Ragnar's our main character for Vikings. So let's continue here as the clock is ticking away. So Christopher asked Tony what to do. Yeah, we already went through all that. So then we go back to the school, and Mr. Miller finds his car has been returned. Mr. Miller states that his wife dropped off this morning and it was in the parking spot. AJ says, my dad did this. He's a hero. And Mr. Miller notices that it's a different set of keys and different color when he opens the trunk and all those sorts of stuff. So everything was successful.
But again, he also must already know Tony is still that. He must already know who AJ's dad is. Yeah,
and we know that from later in school when one of the other teachers refers to him as, "Wow, I'm going to give Fredo Soprano a fucking a break on a grade." And would you ask any questions in this situation if you were the person getting the car back? Would you even ask any questions, or just accept the gift and walk with your head down?
I would accept the gift, but I would never sleep okay at night because I'd be worried that I'd be arrested. Somehow the cops would get involved, or someone else, or who knows where the hell the car came from. But
yeah, absolutely. So then we get to therapy, and I kind of already talked about this. I jumped the gun. Tony and they talk about he had a panic attack. He went to his mother's house and sort of had a panic attack, cleaning up the stuff, looking at old pictures of her, but didn't pass out. And he says, "Well, you didn't." She says, "You didn't pass out. It's an improvement." Tony, whoa, dang, 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 dang. We're almost to the end of the episode. We're almost.
I thought we were well past it already. That's not that bad.
That's not that bad. Wow. I think we're just getting to it because I started it right when we started the actual recap of it. After our little intro. But let's finish it up so we're close enough to an hour. But not bad, right, Matt? No,
we're bad. It's better than I thought it was going to be.
We're moving a lot quick. Like I said to you last week. Last week was a lot more, just bullshitting and getting into the Sopranos. Now we'll try to stick to the plan, stupid here for a while and get. Sorry, Soprano stream. Paulie, Christopher's chemistry was the best. No, please. Like we say all the time with our streams, if you have Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or Ragnar stuff, just don't spoil stuff for people that haven't watched the shows. But by all means, reference out the ass, because I can't help but make references. This is you can only talk Sopranos in the chat room, motherfuckers. Listen, motherfuckers, don't you dare post anything about any fucking other shows. No, it's fine. Please.
Have you ever done a whole podcast in that voice? You should sometime. Like a Halloween special of that.
You think, Matt? Yes. Maybe I will. So you cannot forever my computer. I'm sorry, your computer's being a fucking jerk. Let's all call Tim. Tim, your computer can eat a dick. Fucking, and not a good one either. Like a smelly old one.
Like Dick Barone.
Like Dick Barone or Dick Buttkiss. Or sorry, Joe and I went on a 20-minute dick conversation the other night. I don't want to go there too. So anyway, so we get this whole thing that Milfy thinks Livia's in good hands and she's in a good situation. Milfy notes that Tony must be bad, and Tony states none of this makes him feel better. He's really sad, but he's full of rage. Milfy states how hard is it to admit that Tony might have feelings of hatred towards his mother, and Tony says, "I love Livia," and he's like, "No, you don't get. You're not getting me right. I know you love her, but it doesn't mean you can't love someone and hate them at the same time." Do you agree with that sentiment? Can you love and hate someone at the same time?
Oh, of course you can. I mean, there's people that you can hate without ever loving, but there's a lot of people that you can love that you can hate only because you have to. You can't because you care that much about them. Otherwise, it's not worth it. A lot of times, you just blow someone off. I could name 1,000 people that you and I have known for years that like I could never really hate because I would just blow them off and not care. They're not that important to me. But there's people that I love to death that can make me hate them.
Right. Absolutely. And no, not eat a dick Tim. Eat a dick Tim's computer. And Johnny Stark says, "Oh, cool. In that case, I'm glad Tyrion became king and Daenerys invented tampons. Genius." Forget about it, says Duke Chronic, joining other Soprano cast. Oh, love you guys. Thank you so much. So, okay. So anyways, Tony
flips out on Melfi at that point.
And this is the first time he really flips out on her. And the first time she seems a little scared by him.
Yeah.
But I guess she's probably a little also turned on by him, as we find out later in this moment. She's basically on and off being slightly turned on by him up until the point where she feels like her life's at risk. So at the Bada Bing, Tony sits down to have a drink. Georgie picks up the phone and dials the number. Georgie states he's still having trouble and notes that it's saying he needs to push 2 for the party's extension. I don't know the party's extension. And he just keeps going. And I have to say, we talked a lot in the first episode about how good the Sopranos music eventually becomes and how much of a character onto itself the music becomes in the show. This, to me, is the first moment, besides the theme, that really does that. I remember, you were talking about remembering that scene with Paulie. This was another scene that I remembered so well that I thought must have happened later because it's also repeated a lot. Scenes like this. I think there's 2 other scenes like this with Tony and Georgie. But the music, bum my motherfucking knees.
Yeah.
Come on. Blah, 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 peace. That song was like embedded into my brain. And when that came on, I'm like, oh my God, I know what's about to happen now. I just knew it. It just hit home for me. And we get this amazing soundtrack in this moment with the strippers all doing
right. It's perfect stripper music too.
Yep. And hate is a strong emotion, as strong as love. Fuck, I sound like a Jedi. But you're right, Johnny. Hate is as strong of emotion as love. And sometimes, in some ways, it can be wrapped up, especially when you're dealing with your mothers and dealing with family.
And you're Italian, and there's guilt, and you're Catholic, and there's Catholic guilt, and all this stuff about feeling certain ways towards your mother. And, you know, at the same time, he's trying to be a dutiful son.
And Tom says you can't truly hate someone without loving them first. And that's what Matt was saying and hinting at earlier, that there's some people that you can't, if someone's just an asshole.
No, there are a couple of people I actually do hate that never loved. But overall, the people you really, because you just blow those people off if you don't have to see them all the time.
Right. And I guess you're right about that. But I'm thinking that like it's more, I would categorize it more of like people that I just simply want no part of and are dead to me, so to speak.
Right. But there's also people you work with that you can't avoid. That was the people I'm thinking about people you worked with.
Absolutely. When I used to do performing for kids and go to daycares or camps or whatever, I'd occasionally bump into like a director that I just knew I wouldn't get along with.
Yeah.
I had to pretend.
Yeah, but the difference is you don't have to see them all the time. I'm talking about like there's people I've worked with, and I shouldn't say this. No, I love everyone at
you love everyone that you ever work. Yeah, Matt, you love everyone, everywhere, every how on this podcast that you worked with. So anyway,
Jenna Soprano. I can't stand Jenna Soprano.
Okay, we're gonna get the Jenna.
No, I'm sorry, it's too early for that. I shouldn't get that worked up because she's gonna get me.
It is worth mentioning though, and something I skipped over.
Oh, she mentions it. You're right.
Milfy does ask him at one point in the episode about his sisters, and he says, "My sisters have already wiped their hands with her," and he already implies that he has two sisters. So okay, so let's just get the end of this episode. Tony freaks out to the music, to the strippers, perfect balance, perfect perfect bump, bump, ba-da-dum, bump, and he just bashes the shit out of. But no, this is where I confuse it with future scenes. In this one, he just grabs the phone and goes bang, 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 and Georgie just falls.
Georgie's not scarred from this one for life.
No, or loses an eye or something.
Right.
And then we get Tony doing that very familiar visual of Tony where he's like part animal, part human, and having like going up to the camera. Sorry for the close-up, guys, and goes as the shadows kind of build up in front of him and stuff, and it just you really welcome to the world of Tony Soprano, and it's like bam, you are in. Welcome to the fucking Sopranos, and that's the end of episode 2. So much better than the pilot.
Oh, it just feels. Everyone feels right. The whole thing feels right.
Absolutely.
And so little AJ and Meadow. Oh, it's
so beautiful.
So nice.
So beautiful. Let's jump a couple more comments before we go. Drew Chronic, they did have good music in The Sopranos. Johnny Stark says, well said. It was well wrote in the shade of gray portrayal, portraying emotions in realistic circumstances most can relate to. And I think that's what's so good. And when Matt and I often talk about, and I would include Game of Thrones in there, but I know Matt's not hasn't watched Game of Thrones yet, so he's not in on that same heart level. But that's what I love about Breaking Bad as well, and is that Walter eventually does become evil in the sense that Tony becomes truly evil at the end of all of this, or truly embracing that dark side. But both shows exceptionally well at looking at that gray area. And same with Deep Space Nine, a Star Trek series that I love so much. What I love about Deep Space Nine more than I love about any other Star Trek series, and why I consider it in the same breath as The Sopranos, The Wire, the Breaking Bad, it's because any show that doesn't just show you the good guys and the bad guys, when there's actually a gray area, and The Sopranos does that as well.
You can't name a bad guy in The Sopranos, or a good guy for that matter. There is no such thing. I mean,
absolutely. And
Ralphie kind of, they portray him that way, but
yeah, but even him, he has that relationship with his son that he's like really cares. I know what happens to his son, but he really cares about him. And I mean, I'm trying to
even Richie, there's a part of him that's kind of right, that like, I'm Jackie's older brother. Who the hell are you to be in charge? You almost get where he comes from. He's not.
I'm trying to think it's a good question though. If we have any truly good people on The Sopranos, not even the father who almost hooks up with Carmela at one point in time. I mean, and who manipulates women for free food. It's or Artie maybe, but
no, because Artie's
wife.
Yeah, but she's such a bitch. She really is.
I know she really is. She really is.
Good in what sense? Like good is like morally can say that they were never corrupted by what happened. Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I would say maybe Adriana's somewhat innocent in her sense. Like she's an innocent doe-eyed. She's like very, very, she doesn't realize the stuff in the same way that like she's not complicit in the same way Carmela's complicit.
Yeah, but she knows what she's getting into too.
You're right. I just love her. Anyways, let's jump in the chat a little bit before we call it a day. Mick Dicker says, when they play that Cake song, Frank Sinatra for Christopher, when he buys all those newspapers, because it's one of my favorite Soprano moments too, when he sees his name in the newspaper and they play that song and just kicks in. They really know. And I think especially at the end of an episode, no better show for that, like, going away song is The Sopranos. Sons of Anarchy does it really well too when it hits a home run with the
my favorite one of The Sopranos. I don't want to ruin this yet, but it's
whatever.
When Christopher's in the hospital and when they think he's gonna die and they're playing this weird Otis Redding song. It's My Lover's Prayer, and it's just it's one of the coolest scenes in the whole show.
It's so sad with the way Adriana breaks down.
Breaks down, yeah. And it's shot perfectly, and the music is the perfect motion for it.
Amazing acting by her in that moment too. So let's jump a couple more chats and then we'll call it a day. Tom, Tony is a dick, the biggest dick. Like I said it earlier. He is he's this side of Woody Woodpecker, Bugs Bunny to the way he fucks with people. He really likes to fuck with people more than almost anything. Tony.
Yeah, but imagine if Tony's not in that role. Whoever is. I mean actually in the role in the mafia. The person who's in there instead of him could be so much worse. Tony is very measured and.
No, I agree with you. And essentially, you look at what happens with New York later on with Philly or Tardo, and we'll get all into that later.
Yeah, I know. Right, we're wrapping. We're on episode friggin' 2 here. And we're
right
talking about season 6 and season 5.
But that's what's good, and that's what's a little different about what we're doing with The Sopranos rather than what Joe and I do with the Game of Thrones.
Right.
We're kind of talking about it as it goes, as if it's the first time. And Sopranos is just something, it's hard not to look at the overall and how it all has an effect in the entire story arc for now, because it's been so long and it's something that's almost out of the consciousness a little bit. So it's just interesting. I'm hopefully a couple people will be checking out these and will be inspired to check out The Sopranos for themselves again or for the first time. So
just Paulie Walnuts, like watch the show for that alone, you know?
So Matt, till next Wednesday, my friend. Let me kick
so
in.
We're going next Wednesday then.
Next Wednesday. Is that good for you? It is, but if all right, you know what? If it's gonna be Wednesdays, let's not. If we have to commit to a time, I have to stay at work till like 3:30 on like half of the Wednesdays. So let's say like 4:30, not before 4:30 again. We'll be more like between 4:30 and 5. Okay, 4:30 and 5 generally on Wednesdays. Okay, so let me just, I have to open something up, Matt. Excuse me. Let me open this file up 1 second before we call it a day, because somehow that closed out. So everybody, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll try to stick to that general time. And I will, I usually post all the events as early in the week as I can. And I will try to post this event relatively early so it's there and waiting. And if anything changes, I can just change the start time on it as well. So guys, whoa. Thank you so much for joining us for this Sopranos recap. Thank you to Tom, Johnny motherfucking Stark, Tom, Tim, McDicker.
You love saying Dick.
I love McDicker. You're great. And also Lola. Thank you guys so much for joining us live today. It was so great to talk about The Sopranos with you guys. And thank you so much to Matt. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at I Got Issues, man. You can follow Matt at Big Daddy Matt on Google+. You can also email me anytime you want at IGotIssuesMan@gmail.com. Any questions you have for episode 3, if you're already ready and you have stuff you want us to talk about on the recap, if you're listening to this podcast in the audio form on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening to this on your audio capture devices. You can find out how to subscribe to our audio cast in the description box below. We will be back every Wednesday, or at least essentially every Wednesday, to talk about another episode of The Sopranos. Sorry about your ears. Sorry about the music kicking in. That was way too loud. I should do a warning in the video. Be prepared for loud music. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good night.
Oh, remember last week you did, I think it was hashtag no fucking ZD, right?
Yes, yeah. Hashtag.
This week, hashtag Buffalo Mozzarella.
Okay. Buff Maws.
Buff Maws.
Buff Maws. It's
yeah. Who the hell knows how to spell mozzarella?
Yeah, no one's gonna do it. We'll get motherfucking lots of stuff. If you have any comments on Twitter, hashtag Buff Muff.
It's so stupid.
I know it is. It's ridiculous. Anyways, goodbye, everybody. See you, Matt and Phil. Sorry about your ears, Tom. You signed a contract when hooking up in this podcast that we will not be responsible for destroying one's ears. Goodbye, everybody.